So this is Clovis. Clovis has an interesting walk. He's also a pretty interesting guy, as it happens. Everyone he encounters and every decision he makes revolves around finding a dragon. Clovis makes his special interest abundantly clear to anyone who's willing to listen, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it's really the only thing that matters to him. He'll derail any conversation that doesn't relate to finding a dragon. He'll reject potential allies if they don't have information on finding a dragon. He'll let his enemies escape just because he's eager to get on with finding a dragon. It's kind of funny, it's definitely absurd. It's the first hour of Dragon Valor, an action RPG for the PS1. Without the context, it begs the question, not, where is the dragon? But rather, what's Clovis's deal anyway? I'm gonna get serious here for a moment to cover the beginning of the game and Clovis's origin. It won't take long, and it'll be important to know for later, so let's get started. In this fantasy world, dragons are a rare species, but their catastrophic power and concentrated hatred towards humans is unrivaled. Their effectiveness and destruction is matched only by their resilience. They can only be defeated by use of a Dragon Valor, a rare sword imbued with the power to slay a dragon. Whether the blade itself or some otherworldly force chooses the wielder is hard to say at the game's start, but through fate or chance, they seem to always make their way into the hands of those willing to face the dragons. The wielder of these magic swords take on the blade's title for themselves, becoming that with what they hold, a Dragon Valor. To the west of the known world, within the kingdom of Urat, a dragon and a Dragon Valor battle near the village of Brise. But even for a Dragon Valor, dragons are still dangerous, and this dragon overpowers the warrior before moving on to the village, sparing none in its path. Enter Clovis, having only just returned, desperately searching for his younger sister, his only living family, as his home blazes around him. In the distance, a burning figure slowly walks toward him, calling out to him. It's his sister. She collapses, short of reaching him, and as Clovis holds her in his arms, she takes her last breath. Nearby, the Dragon Valor clings to life, calling out for help. Clovis approaches and asks what happened to the village. The warrior only has the strength left to say, "the dragon," before succumbing to his wounds. On his death, his sword mysteriously appears before Clovis. The danger that a dragon possesses, the mysterious sword, the details, none of that really matters to Clovis. Revenge is what matters. Now, as the world behind him becomes a memory, his future is reshaped by fire and purpose, as he rushes into the forest, and there's only one thing he cares about now: finding the dragon. Hopefully, between Clovis's oddity and the prologue, I have your curiosity, especially since we still have important questions to answer. But what is Dragon Valor? Does Clovis in fact find the dragon? Who's the handsome narrator? Well, I can definitely answer two of those questions. Let's start with, what's Dragon Valor? Dragon Valor is actually the third game in Namco's Dragon Buster series. Dragon Buster? I hardly know her. I'm so sorry. The first in the series, simply Dragon Buster, was a multi-platform release all the way back in 1984, which also centers on Clovis, though his adventure is more straightforward then. Here, Clovis is on a mission to rescue Princess Celia from an evil dragon. Simple as. The gameplay loop has you play through a series of levels across an overworld map where you'll fight monsters and platform across a 2D stage. You'll get a little agency over your quest, being able to decide which direction Clovis goes at certain junctions, which can take you to completely different levels, which was neat at the time. I've actually got a couple fun facts for you guys about this one. Tasty little treats for my sweet little gamers. Did you know that Dragon Buster was the first game to utilize a double jump mechanic? That's right, it all started here. According to this article anyway. Eat your heart out, Goemon. Not only that, but it was one of the earliest games to make use of health, or vitality, for the player. If you're still hungry for more, this is for the real Namco fans. Did you know that you can play an in-game version of Dragon Buster in everyone's favorite Tales game, Tales of the Abyss? Well, I didn't, because I've only played like maybe half an hour of it. Look, I didn't have any Tales games as a kid. I was busy playing fucking Quest 64 and Evergrace, which probably explains a lot about why I am the way that I am. Anyway, Dragon Buster was a huge hit in Japan, and in 1989, Dragon Buster 2 released on the NES as a direct sequel. While Namco published Dragon Buster 2, it was Toes, or Tosei, the team behind the Starfy franchise, that developed the game. But in Dragon Buster 2, you don't play as Clovis, the Dragon Slayer. No, you play as Carl, the Archer, because of course you do. As Carl, you'll travel across 6 stages to find the sword used by Clovis, the OG Dragon Valor. The visuals are better and there are some gameplay differences, but I don't want to play as Carl on his quest for a sword, I want to play as Clovis on his quest for a princess. 10 years later, in 1999, the third entry in the series, Dragon Valor, was released on the PS1 in Japan, with the North American version hitting shelves in 2000. Like Buster 2, Valor was published by Namco but had a different developer. This time it was Now Productions. I guess, play beautiful Katamari today. And Dragon Valor was built as a faithful combination of Dragon Buster and Dragon Buster 2, which on paper makes me want to Dragon Bust. Clovis was back as a main character, and this time in glorious early 3D. I love these old 3D graphics so much, as I'm sure a lot of you watching this video probably do as well. People like to shit on PS1 Hagrid, but I don't. I shit in the toilet. Anyway, there are familiar magic spells and items from the earlier games, and you're still able to occasionally choose alternate paths leading to new locations again as well. Plus, since Carl is gone, we're back to using a sword again, so, that's good. We've got the HP meter, we've got the MP meter, and you better believe we got that double jump back too. So in so many words, Now Productions did in fact manage to implement many staple features associated with the series in its next iteration, while making the game bigger and looking better. Major kudos to them. But there's one important feature, probably the biggest of the bunch, that we need to discuss. But in order to do that, I want to connect you to some of my own history with the game, and why I even picked this up to begin with. See, I didn't pick this game up at its launch. In fact, it would be another decade before I even became aware of its existence. Turn the clock back from now to 2010. It's my senior year of high school, and when I'm not busy being a general goblin there, I'm working my soulless part-time job at the mall. Express, a clothing store. It was awful, but right across from a Lane Bryant outlet. Not bad for Jakey, not bad at all. Anyway, when school didn't keep me busy, work did, but I still wanted something I could sink my time into between work and, not actually studying. I don't remember how much I researched Dragon Valor beforehand, but it wasn't long before it was in my eBay cart. Then my mailbox, then my PS2. No, I didn't have a PS3 in 2010. My money was going to American Spirits, Taco Bell, and fucking, Dragon Valor, apparently. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I wasn't just looking for anything to fill that little extra time that I had. I was craving something oddly specific and kept it in kind of a mental checklist. Something short, considering my limited time. An action game with some RPG elements would be great too. A smaller world would be better as well, with kind of scaled back levels rather than huge sprawling areas to explore. And some platforming too. As you can imagine, Dragon Valor ticked all those boxes just based off what little we've talked about here. But there was one last detail I was hoping to find. Something fresh to add another element to the gameplay that made it feel new without really overcomplicating anything or asking too much from me. All these things together was a pretty tall order, but Dragon Valor eventually found its way to me. But did it deliver? The answer is yeah, it really did. We have to get back to Clovis though, so I can really break down what that feature is. Sure, Clovis is a little crazy and pretty unlikable since his sister died, but despite those qualities, he do be having an effect on the ladies. While bustering and valoring, he'll catch the attention of a tomboy inventor, Carolina, who convinces him into stopping by her house after promising she had a hint on where Clovis could find a dragon. I guess you could say she wanted him to get to know her South Carolina. It goes about how you'd expect. Where's the dragon? Oh, it's nearby, by the way, would you like some tea? And then he leaves. Classic Clovis. I'd understand this inventor girl being into Clovis and like I'm willing to tune out literally everything you say because you're my only conventionally attractive option, but I didn't say he has a way with a lady. I said ladies. You can straight up ignore her, and if you do, you'll eventually wander into the bedroom of the Princess of Raxus, the neighboring kingdom. By the way, this isn't just any princess. It's Celia, the princess Clovis rescues in the first Dragon Buster game, which is pretty awesome actually. She's pretty, she's spoiled, and despite all logic, she's more than willing to feed into Clovis's dragon fixation once he shows her how little he cares about her. Works every time, apparently. This is the point though, where that fresh gameplay mechanic I wanted comes into play. Dragon Valor doesn't begin and end with Clovis. Depending on what you do, Clovis will eventually actually shack up with either Carolina or Princess Celia and have a son. One time skip later, and you'll either be playing as Roland through Carolina or Prince Arlen through Celia. Their story is shaped by the actions of their father and the consequences that come with being the wielder of a Dragon Valor. This feature made Dragon Valor special amongst the busters that came before it and many other games at the time. You'll play as Clovis and he'll have a kid. Then you'll play as that kid. Then you'll play as that kid's kid, or even crazier, that kid might have a choice between who they shack up with as well, creating another branching path. Then that kid will have twins, and you'll play as the sister. Or the brother. It just depends. Does it sound cool? I'll answer it for you. It is. It's a genuinely interesting way to spice up the game in a way that doesn't really require anything from you, but a choice and a button press. There's an additional benefit worth mentioning too. Let's say you don't find Clovis amusing, though I can't imagine why. Well, good news, it won't be long before you're playing as an entirely different character on an entirely different journey. Not just a cheap continuation of Clovis's quest. These characters have their own story, their own look, their own personality, unique bosses, and unique cutscenes. Sure, the big picture is that they're still going to fight a dragon or two, and yeah, their fighting style is almost identical to the other Dragon Valors, but they're different enough in the other ways to justify the system. The Offspring system plays a major role in the RPG mechanics of the game as well. This isn't a traditional game with level ups or experience points, but don't let that bum you out. There are definitely ways to get stronger. Not only that, but how well you do as the parent will directly impact how strong their successor is at the start of their quest. Each character will play through several stages over their section of the world map, which are broken up into smaller connecting areas. You'll travel from one area to another, defeating enemies, solving simple puzzles, or platforming to progress. You're going to find a variety of items scattered about or dropped by enemies that give you an edge. Spells, consumables, currency, and most importantly, your typical power-ups. Some of them will give you a pretty substantial stat boost, like HP plus 8, but the less impactful ones have a greater purpose in the long run. So a pendant only gives you plus 1 HP, but you can find several per character, and these are then carried over to your children, allowing them to start out with a little stat boost. You'll find HP, MP, attack, defense, and even some unique treasures if you search enough. And you'll take the magic you learn and their upgrades with you to pass down as well. Pretty fucking cool, right? I'll get into what you can do with currency in a bit, but this is the general gameplay loop. Start as a character, go through their stages, find power-ups, beat a couple bosses, then pass the torch. Or I should say pass the Dragon Valor. Depending on how well you do as a previous character, you'll have a bonus when starting as your next in line, and you just keep building on those successes from one character to another, so that by the end of your lineage, you're prepared for the final story beats that have been building up for literal generations. That's really awesome. By now, I may have painted this picture of Dragon Valor becoming one of my favorite games ever. But, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah, I have some fond memories of this game, some being the keyword here, but in that fall of 2010, while Dragon Valor managed to capture most of the gameplay elements I wanted, it also found a way to annoy the hell out of me with how the others were implemented. It all starts to get frustrating as soon as the story starts to slow down, because not all stories are created equally across Dragon Valor. Prince Arlen, the character on the box art for the North American version, he's dull, totally boring. His story doesn't really pick up until toward the end, and his characterization is just that he's really nice, I think, and naive. Miss me with that. He does get a really badass fight with the son of one of Clovis's enemies on top of a mountain though, so I mean there's that. His son though, Prince Felipe, totally different story. Complete badass, despite having the worst haircut in the game. Check this out. Becomes the best swordsman in the kingdom at age 15. Goes to the neighboring kingdom and whoops ass in a tournament as a total no-name wanderer just to spy on how cute their princess is. This guy, the princess is captured by an evil minister who threatens to kill her if Felipe doesn't give him his sword. You know, the Dragon Valor, one of the few that exist. A priceless treasure passed down from your legendary grandfather, King Clovis, down to your heroic father, King Arlen. You know what Felipe does? He doesn't even think about it, just tosses it to him because, and I quote, I'll get it back later. Freaking love this guy, second only to Clovis. I mention all this because when your character is interesting and their story is moving and holding your attention, things are really good, and it's easy to ignore the deeper issues. But when they're not, the game becomes a total slog. The story for that section becomes deadweight and makes the issues with the rest of the game way more noticeable. And that's a hard place to recover from, even with characters like Felipe. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. There are issues later on that are much more frustrating. Maybe this is just me. It wouldn't be the first time I had an opinion where one of my Discord friends said, I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. But it vexes me how long some of the invincibility windows for enemies are in this game, and how frequently they occur. If an enemy is knocked down, they get enough time to stand up, dust themselves off, and get an attack in with time to spare. Sometimes, even your most basic attacks will knock them down and then give them that window. In addition to that, there are some enemies that gain invincibility as they perform their attack. You can't get a knockdown in or an interruption in, so you just have to wait. And I get it, this game is kind of like a side-scroller beat-em-up hack-and-slash arcade game, but these invincibility windows just seem so constant to the point where combat becomes kind of a waiting game. To be clear, this really didn't bother me that much at first. There are a variety of enemies, and I wanted them to have a chance to attack to get a better feel for their capabilities in combat. But it comes to a point where you've experienced most of what the game's going to throw at you, and by then you're just waiting for these totally arbitrary invincibility windows on the enemies to end so you can hurry through. And some monsters, I mean, I don't even know what to say about this. It's a floating deer head. I don't know if this is a nod to another game. When I wrote this script, I was like annoyed by it, but now I kind of think this is hilarious, so they're going to get a pass for this one. Anyway, it's just a bummer that you're so limited in your windows to damage an enemy, because there would otherwise be all kinds of cool things to chain together. Combo attacks, dodges, aerial strikes, specials, backflips. That doesn't even account for the magic attacks you'll learn and upgrade. It would have been nice if there were a handful of different enemy types, like maybe they could have had a higher HP pool at the cost of not having those invulnerability windows, just so I could get a series of attacks in. I was really craving the satisfaction to just be able to hit things after a while, which left me feeling really bored more often than I liked. Oh, and before I forget, make sure you don't get too bored, because boredom is the gateway to carelessness, and carelessness is the gateway to being dead. If you do manage to run out of HP outside of a boss fight, you'll start the level over at the very beginning. And some of these stages are long, not in size or scope by the way, they just drag. Not only because of the combat slowdown, but for other reasons I'm going to touch on. The big one is the puzzles. You won't find them on every level, but when they show up, they're completely brain dead. Flip a switch, stand on a pressure plate, open a door with a key, the absolute basics, which would be fine if they didn't waste your time, but some do, and when they do, they waste a lot of it. The worst ones require you to go to one side of a stage just to get a key, before running to the other end of the stage just to open a door. But if you went all the way to the locked side of the stage first, well, you're just fucked. Have fun backtracking one extra time just because you're unlucky and chose wrong. This is all in addition to the combat slowdown, which is emphasized even more because backtracking will respawn enemies. Okay, look, the game has a lot of unique stages, environmental textures, themes, soundtracks, don't get me wrong. But one character in particular, Prince Felipe's daughter Anne, literally goes through their first level 3 times. Crumbling desert ruins. I hate crumbling desert ruins. It's the same environment, same score, same enemies. It was bad enough that I almost gave up and said screw it, I'll go make that Kingdom Under Fire video I never finished. It's almost done. It's really good. And by the way, the currency I mentioned earlier, I just want you to imagine that you finished another repetitive stage as Anne. Your eyes are glossing over, but you finally reach the end of the stage and you're feeling optimistic that the next one will have something fresh. You feel hopeful, excited, like Clovis says famously, ready to bust her. And then you notice you can stop by a shop before your next level. And your stomach turns. There are no towns to visit or settlements to speak with locals, which kind of breaks my heart because the game world is very interesting. But it is what it is. Instead, shops are all owned by these guys who look the same. They're brothers. At least that's what they told me. I guess they've got that Officer Jenny Nurse Joy thing. But depending on the brother, they'll offer one of 3 options for the player: buying, selling, or trading. In principle, this is interesting, but the implementation makes me pretty angry. When you visit a shop, the brother will either buy luxury goods you come across, offer to sell you instant recovery items or power-ups, or trade your items for their items. There's an interesting system with holding off on selling your luxury goods because you might find a brother that will buy them at a higher price down the road. For a brother selling items, you're better off prioritizing power-ups that are passed on to your children and ignoring the consumables. You'll find plenty of them spread out across levels anyway. As for trading, you'll definitely want to trade whatever you have with what they have, as far as I can tell, since I've only ever turned a profit by doing so. All these are great, again, in principle, but after finishing a level and just wanting to move on and find something interesting again, I don't want to stop by a shop because it feels like the game just grinds to a fucking halt. The load-in is slow, the repetitive dialogue is slow, and the actual system of buying, selling, and trading. First, they're going to ask if you want to do business or not, and they ask very slowly for some reason. Then they'll ask you about their first item to buy or trade or your first item to sell, slowly. Then the second item, slowly. You get the picture. I've never had a slower shop experience in any game I think I've ever played. It's just kind of mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggler to me? Mind-boggling to me. I don't get it. All that is when the game is at its worst, and I know I harped on some of that negative stuff for a while, but it just needed to be said, and I wanted to get it out of the way. So keep in mind, even if a character story isn't particularly interesting, or even if the levels are kind of sucking ass consistently, I always enjoy the cutscenes, which occur more often than I expected. They're enjoyable to watch, since they capture the best moments of the story, and are well animated as well. I like how some characters have their own unique animations, even if they aren't that important in the grand scheme of things. Like this fat dragon guy, he'll be like, "Huh?" when he thinks he misheard someone. It sucks that there isn't any voice acting, since I think the game would have really only benefited more with it, but everything still stands up fine on its own. And I want to touch on the story quickly again too, which I mentioned before starts out kind of vanilla, but has some moments that are surprising or made me laugh. There's a really nice mixture of like classic jrpg fantasy with some interesting story beats along the way. Not everyone's story ends happily or sadly, or really even ends, since you might encounter your former character again as their successor. It's cool that the writers found another way to make something as classic as fighting dragons more nuanced over time without trying to overcomplicate things right from the start, like with a lore dump. Man wants revenge, go kill dragon quickly becomes, okay, what exactly are these swords? And am I actually fighting dragons, or, I mean, what is that? Like, what's going on? By the way, the setting kind of gives me, like, Baby's first Berserk vibes. Like, if Berserk wasn't anywhere near as graphic and had Guts going after dragons instead of the God Hand, and you eventually played as, I guess, like the Moonlight Child to take over for Guts eventually. And don't be one of those people like, this is nothing like Berserk, because I know, it's just a vibe. Also, I wanted to mention that there are a few tracks in the OST that sound a little bit like something out of an early Kingsfield title, which gets huge points from me for. It's kind of like almost Souls-like in certain sections of the game. And when it's not like that, it has this over-the-top Dynasty Warriors metal flair. It's really just like good, fun listening. I never had any issues with the soundtrack in this game. Also, look at this art. Taro Yamasaki. Come on, this is great stuff. So that's basically everything I want to say about Dragon Valor, so I'll summarize my thoughts by answering two questions. Question 1. Is Dragon Valor a good game? Broadly speaking, yeah, for sure. But I say that with a warning. I'm someone that usually makes a point to replay games, and after playing through Dragon Valor, this is one I don't think I need to revisit anytime soon. It's partly because I don't get a ton of satisfaction from the actual action combat gameplay, but I do enjoy some of the other features quite a bit. So I know it's a matter of returning, I just don't know exactly when I'll get an itch to play this game again. Question 2. Should you play Dragon Valor? I say absolutely, but let me give you some advice if you do. Kick back and play it when you feel like it. This isn't the kind of game that you should play for more than maybe an hour at a time, unless you're really loving it. Instead, take it in short bursts, get through a couple levels, or finish a character that you're particularly enjoying before saving the rest for another time. That way you don't burn yourself out from some of the more annoying sections like I almost did. Laugh when it's funny, intentionally or otherwise. Appreciate the battles when they're good because, look, some of them aren't. Enjoy the level design when it doesn't have you running back and forth because eventually you probably will be. Dragon Valor wasn't received that well in Japan or otherwise, but it's clear that there was a lot of effort put into this game. There are moments when it looks and plays really well, and the game had real direction and purpose in bringing the Dragon Buster series back on the scene. By paying tribute to its predecessors while incorporating some genuinely cool new systems, this game and the team behind it have my respect, despite where it falls short. I hope you'll give it a shot, and I hope it's as worth your time as it was mine, both when I first played it 15 years ago and now. One last thing, My channel's been undergoing some changes as I step away from my super serious, overly monotonous reviews. I'm trying to take my videos in a different direction and make them more personal. I still want to touch on the topics in game analysis or review that are interesting to me, but I also want to represent myself and my sense of humor more, both in my full videos and these silly little shorts I make on the side. So if you're returning as a previous subscriber and made it this far, like always, thanks for sticking with me even when my uploading is really inconsistent. And if you're new, I hope you'll stick around for more. Either way, if you haven't already, please join my Discord, hang out with my friends and I in voice chat. We're always talking and gaming, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.